Welcome to Secrets from the Scene, a show for local musicians who want to improve their music, grow their audience, and learn about Minnesota's music scene. If you're interested in talking about all things music related and meeting interesting people from our local community, you're in the right place. Welcome to Secrets from the Scene. My name is Stephen Helvig, and I'm your host. I'm a local music producer here in the Twin Cities, and I started this podcast as a way to be a resource, an educational resource for our scene, but also as a way just to bring the community together and introduce people that I haven't met, people that I do know, but to each other, so we can all be a little bit more connected as a community here in town. And my guest today is a perfect example of why I was doing this, because she has a ton of talents, a huge following online, a lot of accomplishments, and yet we've never crossed paths. And we've both been crossing the same circles for over a decade and yet have never met. So this is a perfect example of why I wanted to do this. And I'm excited to introduce her to everyone else that maybe doesn't know her already. So let me just read her bio a little bit, because there's a lot here that she's already accomplished. Lucia Sarmiento is a saxophone player, composer, and educator based in Minneapolis, Minnesota. Her music is the expression of a diverse musical upbringing, the integration of jazz, funk, pop, and Latin American rhythms fused with her own sensibility for angular yet beautiful melodies. In her debut album, Escape, which is coming out this spring, Lucia leads a synth-heavy jazz quintet with the tenor saxophone. Additionally, she introduces delicate vocal arrangements, a flute choir, and the iwi, like sprinkles of textures and colors in her playful jazz compositions. In recent years, Lucia has gained a social media following of over 100,000 people, releasing educational videos in Spanish and English that provide a global perspective on jazz and saxophone. She has represented and collaborated with brands like Yamaha, Akai, Eastman, Ars Berkeley, and many others. As a touring artist, Lucia has worked with international pop stars Pitbull and Karol G since 2021, playing saxophone, flute, and guitar in sold-out stadiums around the world. Born and raised in Lima, Peru, Lucia grew up studying artists like John Coltrane, Sonny Rollins, Chris Potter, and Andres Prado. In 2013, a saxophone performance scholarship brought her to Minneapolis, Minnesota, where she has been an active member of the music scene ever since. Please welcome Lucia Sarmiento.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for being here.
I'm excited.
Me too. Yeah, it's great meeting you. I'm glad you made time for this. I appreciate you reaching out.
Yeah, and also you have a beautiful studio. It's like an oasis here in Minneapolis.
Oh, thank you.
Cool.
Thank you. You know, we connected online and I started looking up your stuff and I was like, wow, very, very impressive. But I knew nothing. I mean, I know once I did start finding information, I saw that you've played with a lot of people that I know as well. And obviously we're in the same town, of course.
Right.
But walk people through a little bit of your history and how you came up here and what you've been up to the last 10, 12 years.
All right. Well, I was born and raised in Lima, Peru. And I guess I always had, this passion for music since I was very little. Back when I was in high school, there was not very many places to go study music or, exactly what I wanted to do. I wanted to be a jazz musician. I remember I wanted to sound like Sonny Rollins, so the more traditional jazz stuff. But also part of me I always told my mom I want to be a rock star because I also play the guitar. And I took lessons with a guitar player from Peru called Andres Prado, who happened to be my mentor back in the day. He had taught at McNally for many years, and I think he got sick of the cold and he returned to Peru. But he's the one who helped me get a scholarship here. He introduced me to the McNally faculty. So I applied and, actually I lived in Buenos Aires for a few months before coming here, but then I ended up coming here to Minnesota. And I've been here. I'm an active member of the music scene since 2013. So yes, we have a lot of friends in common.
Yeah. you did the college thing, right? You studied, got a degree in saxophone performance. Is that?
Yes, saxophone performance.
Okay. What happened once you graduated? Like, what was the next steps?
Oh my God. So much. So, first of all, I guess I was just doing what everybody else, like I was very involved with the wedding scene here. I still am. I play all the events, but I remember I saw somewhere when I was in college that in order to grow, you had to play as much as you could, and try to play as many styles as possible. So I was saying yes to every single opportunity that came my way. Also, I was very broke, I just needed to play, get better, and make money. So I played everything from polka. I remember I did a polka gig for the Vikings game years ago. I had no idea what is polka, but I still did it. I have played salsa. I've played a lot of funk and R&B, being in this city that has so much, history in like funk music. And I have also done a lot of jazz. I also started doing these videos for social media. It kind of started just as a way to share my progress when I was in college. I would make videos for my saxophone lesson and I would post them on Facebook back in the day. That was the thing. And then Instagram came and I started putting them on Instagram. So I guess I started kind of early, but that was a way for me to showcase or like just to tell the world what I was doing and to connect with my friends who were in other parts of the world, right? And I noticed that people really like the pop saxophone solos because I did one for my friend Gemma. So I started doing more of that. And I'm still doing social media, I'm still playing here in town. But a lot of other things have happened, like the tours and the collaborations with other artists that are also outside of the Minneapolis music scene.
So you started doing the pop solo saxophone stuff way back, like right after college?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that's interesting because that's still something that you're doing now, right? Successfully. Yeah.
Like when I was in college, I remember I would send my mom recordings of my playing and she would say, Lucia, can you please play higher and like just like louder? Because she grew up listening to the saxophones from like the 80s and rock music and pop music. And that was so hard for me to do. And so actually that was my biggest weakness, playing high saxophone, pop saxophone. But then I just decided I want to do this well because I think people like it. And, my mom wants to hear more of that. So I have continued to do some of the pop saxophone too.
Sure. Okay. And so you're making these videos, you notice people like them. Mm-hmm. I'm guessing the social media starts to kind of grow slowly around those days. And then you're also taking whatever gigs you can get, from salsa to polka and everything in between. And during those days, are you putting yourself out there as, I'm a sax player? Are you doing a lot of guitar gigging in those days? Or is it just filling in for sax stuff?
No, I studied a lot of guitar in high school and then I just stopped playing it until the Pitbull tour.
Okay. All right. Well, I'm excited to get to the Pitbull tour. I have a lot of questions about that. But were you attempting to get your own group together? Like, where was your mind at? What were your goals when you finished? Where you were like, I want to have a jazz group? Or were you just, I'll just take whatever I can get? I don't have, like, what were you aiming for in the early days?
I remember in 2018, I started reading Ari Herstand's book, How to Make It in the New Music Business or something like that. And right at the beginning, he talked about the music marathon and making, a piece of paper and putting your goals for the next 2 years, 5, 10, 20, 25 years, I don't know. And I think for the next 5 years, I put that I wanted to go on tour with a big pop artist. I also wanted to grow my social media because I saw that it was starting to give me some opportunities to work with brands, to record saxophone for artists outside of the Minneapolis community. Yeah, it was bringing a lot of new things that I could do from home, It was connecting me to also other people who maybe had similar stories like me, like that had come from other countries to study and play jazz or learn how to play their instruments better and be part of the United States music community. So I guess I was trying to do a little bit of everything. I also wanted to get better at saxophone. That was always my biggest goal, was always to grow as a musician and as an artist. I think in college, I also had a band. I played with my friends and I was trying to book some shows under my name. So I guess to answer your question, a little bit of everything. I also
Yeah.
like teaching a lot. And I found that, if you're a person in Latin America who doesn't speak English very well, you maybe don't have access to a lot of the information that's out there. Because there's a lot of, very knowledgeable, amazing musicians making content or, like teaching lessons, making their blogs, but everything is in English. So I thought, actually, this was my pandemic project. I thought, I have all this time, I have a camera, let's do it. Let's start making educational stuff in Spanish. And so I guess a little bit of everything.
Yeah,
I just,
it sounds like you were just very wide open, like curious
Yes.
about a lot of things and open to trying a lot of different experiences, which, has worked out for the most part. Okay, we're going to come back to the educational side of things.
Yeah.
But what year did you finish McNally?
2017.
2017. And then you said in like 2018, you read Ari's book, which I wonder, was that right when that came out? His first edition of that book? Do you remember?
Maybe. It was the orange one, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Because, he's from Minneapolis originally as well. He lives in California now, but I helped like distribute and promote that book when it was in town. So I read it right when it came out too. So you read the book, you start making some goals, you start thinking long-term about your career, and you're taking all the experiences that come up. All right. Well, the big one that comes up is touring, and not just a little tour, but a huge tour. So was Pitbull the first one?
Yes, that was my big pop tour.
All right. So walk us through, first of all, how did that happen? And what did it take to get on that tour?
It's actually a very crazy story, but I got to the United States at the end of 2013 to go to McNally, to go to school. And I always wanted to go to New York. So with my little bit of savings that I had, I bought a ticket to go to New York. I think it was 2014, 2015.
Mm-hmm.
And I stayed for 2 weeks in my friend's apartment. I think I brought my saxophone. I didn't play, but what I did was I walked everywhere. I just grabbed my backpack and I started walking. I didn't even know where I was going. And I ended up at a guitar center where Dirty Loops was making a masterclass. I think that was when they had just released their big first video of the Justin Bieber cover.
Yeah.
So I was like, oh, cool. Let's go see that, So I saw that. Then I kept walking and I ended up at a jazz bar somewhere in Manhattan. And they had this series where they would make concerts with musicians who were very established and also musicians who were students, so younger. It was this thing. And that night they had 2 saxophone players, Miguel Zenon, who's a amazing alto player. I don't remember where he's from, but he's Latino. And they had Mario Castro, who happened to be, a student. I think he was at Berkeley back in the day. So I thought, oh, people who speak Spanish, let's go watch that. Mm-hmm. And they played jazz. So I checked out their concert. I stayed after the show and I introduced myself to Mario, he was maybe a couple years older than me. And I was like, hey, I'm a saxophone player. I just moved to this country. ¿Qué onda? ¿Quieres ser amigos? And I remember we chatted, we exchanged information, and we exchanged Instagrams back in 2014, 2015, I don't know.
Yeah.
And then 2 days later, I saw him at the subway because he was with the saxophone. I was like, oh, hey. And then we chatted a little more. And I think he asked me if I played any other instruments. And I said, yeah, I play guitar too. I grew up studying classical guitar and playing metal, rock, whatever. And then I didn't see him for, 7 years. And in 2021, he messages me out of the blue on Instagram saying hey, do you still play guitar? Because I have a friend who's looking for someone who plays the saxophone and the guitar to go on a big tour. And like I said, I haven't played guitar in, 10 years,
Yeah.
And I was like, oh man, I don't think I can do it. And he said, just say yes, give it a try, because this must be something big. He works with big artists. So I was like, okay, fake it till you make it, right? So I said, yeah, I play the guitar, of course. And it ended up being to go on tour with Pitbull. The music director, Rob Trujillo, he's from Chile and he works with Pitbull, Carol G. He works with Luis Fonsi, who's the guy who did Despacito.
Mm.
So anyways, he reaches out to me and he tells me about this big opportunity. And I had to send some audition videos. So with my roommates, we cleared out the living room, made a little set, put my camera, and I sent some videos playing the guitar, playing the saxophone, and then their response was, we're looking for a rock star and you don't look like a rock star at all. So can you do this again, but this time like get into the character? So I went and got some black clothes. I got a big fake ponytail, red lipstick, a bunch of eyeliner, and did the videos again. And this time with like all the rock star attitude. And they ended up liking it. So that was the beginning. Yeah, I got the gig. This was in 2021.
Wow.
I believe so, in the pandemic.
That is an awesome story. Like how...
Yeah, full circle.
Yeah, how bizarre that somebody that you... I mean, there's so many moments there that feel unlikely, right? First, that you are aimlessly wandering through a massive city and end up at a jazz bar with other Latino jazz musicians. You stay after, you get an opportunity to connect with one of them and exchange Instagrams. And then 2 days later, you run into him again in a huge city. Like what, even the odds of that are so little, right?
Right.
But leave enough of an impression. And then 7 or 8 years or whatever go by.
Yeah.
And you're still top of mind somehow. Probably because you were still posting around that time.
Exactly.
Which, side note, is just one of the many, many advantages of staying online, because you never know who might have an opportunity for you. But if you're not staying top of mind with your followers, with the people you've connected with, then in most scenarios, if that much time goes by, odds are you're not going to be remembered for that position. So that's already just crazy. It reaches out. You decide to, take the risk of like, yeah, I can do it. Let's go for it. I mean, I love it. I love the story. I love the courage that it takes to put yourself out there and do it. I do have a question though. So you hadn't been playing guitar. Like, how much time did you give yourself on the guitar before you made your audition video?
I don't remember. Like, I think I had 5 days to do it, or 4. Everything was like this.
How did it feel when you picked it back up? You were like, riding a bike, I'm fine. Or were you like really struggling to make the auditions work?
No, thankfully it wasn't too hard because I started playing guitar when I was 7. Okay. So I honestly think that since I started so young, something stuck where I could still do it.
Yeah.
But it was not easy. I got the gig and I believe I had 11 days to learn 40 songs. Half of them were on saxophone, half of them were on guitar. And they did not send charts. They just sent me, the tracks, like the demos from the arrangements. Thankfully, I had a lot of help. My friend, Matt McIntyre, he's a guitar player here in town. He helped me learn the parts and he taught me the best way to play them on the guitar. And then I made charts for the saxophone really quick. But it was 11 days that the clock was ticking. I had to learn this music and I had to get ready to go to Miami to rehearse for 2 weeks. So the pressure was definitely on.
Wow. Okay. So you do the auditions. There was a couple rounds of those. You had to play the part, which I also love. I mean, what a great lesson there too. Then you have 11 days. They say yes. You have 11 days. You go to Miami. You start rehearsals for 2 weeks. What was that like?
It was very hard. I got to say, that's probably one of the hardest things I've done in my life. Physically, mentally. It was my first time being part of such a big production. I am used to playing locally, everything is new. It's a new group of people. It's a new style of music. It's a new city. And the rehearsals were very challenging because we were rehearsing from Monday to Friday for 2 weeks from 9 a.m. till 6 p.m., I believe. I mean, it was the whole thing. You go, it's this huge, beautiful space. Everybody is connected with the in-ears. Everybody has their microphone set up. I didn't just have to play saxophone, which actually it was also hard on the saxophone because I was playing alto. And up until that point, I was mainly a tenor player. And they said, you have to play alto. So I was actually playing 2 new instruments, and trying to figure out my setup on the saxophone, the reeds, the mouthpiece, and then for the guitar, they gave me a Kemper, which I had never even heard that word until that day.
Mm-hmm.
Thankfully, I had a guitar technician, Ronnie, who helped me so much. They, give me the guitar, the Kemper. I have to figure out all the settings, the sounds, and then it's go time.
Wow.
It was very challenging, but for me, it felt like preparing to go to the Olympics or something like that.
In a way, I mean, you don't get a whole lot bigger than playing with Pitbull.
Yeah.
I mean, in terms of like notoriety, in terms of audience size, in terms of venue size, like it doesn't get much bigger.
Yeah.
So I think that's a great analogy. I have to imagine that process made you such a better musician simply because of how stressful it would have been. And the fact that you had to just figure it out. Like you haven't played guitar in a long time. You're given a Kemper, which is a simulator for amps and, that you don't even know how to use. And you have to manage that. You're with all new people. You're in new places. So just the interpersonal skills, asking for help when you need help, the deadlines, the discipline that would go with all of that. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but I would imagine that you came out of that thinking, I can probably do anything now.
Yes. I made it out of that alive. Because for a second, there was moments where I thought I was not going to be able to do it because it was so hard. And then the pressure is on. Like for these very big productions, there are so many moving parts. The team is over 100 people. And you're just a little piece of this huge machine that's running, from the truck drivers to the people who are in charge of feeding the crew. You are the musician, the person who plays the saxophone, and you have to be in your spot, ready to go. You have to wait a lot too, because there's a lot of other things that are important as well. And I think I learned more than becoming a better musician. I think I became a better person because, like you said, there was so much stress. It was a new group of people. I grew up a lot doing that. It was cool.
Yeah. You said a team of over 100, but in terms of the musicians, how many people were involved on the music side?
It was a band of 6 people.
And then did you also learn choreography for the set then too?
Sort of. Well, there was 6 dancers, 6 girls who are in charge of doing all the dancing.
Yep.
But for the band, they did tell us that we are supposed to be like a rock band. We were actually playing a lot of rock. In between Pitbull songs, there was some, I forget now, but there was some like very well-known rock songs that we would do snippets of. We were wearing all black, kind of like leather jacket. I had the big ponytail, the big makeup. And I think during rehearsals, the music director pulled me aside and he said like, hey, you need to look like a rock star, work on it. And I remember going to the hotel room and looking up on YouTube rock bands from the 80s and 90s and, seeing what they were doing on stage with the guitar, which was new for me because I grew up playing classical guitar, which is very different. So anyways, there was a learning curve to it. My first show, I'm sure I was not as comfortable as in show number 40.
Yeah.
Right? But yeah, there was definitely some parts that were like the highlight of the show was going to the front and dancing with Pitbull and my saxophone. And I was like, playing and I had to move at the same time. There was a lot of, like physical work to it too. So I'm happy I've always done sports because it was very demanding.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm sure. How many shows?
So for Pitbull, we did a 2-month tour in the United States. It was an arena tour. If I remember correctly, it was maybe 26 shows. And after that, I thought, the tour was over and I thought, okay, well, the tour is over. I'm going to go home. But they kept sending me the calendar and the next date was in Saudi Arabia, in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia, next week after the tour is over. And then I just continued playing with Pitbull for, I think it was maybe 8 months after that. And we were doing one-offs every weekend in different parts of the country.
Wow.
I don't know how many shows to answer your question. It was a lot.
But you ended up doing like global stuff then after the United States tour.
Yes.
Wow.
We did the Saudi Arabia one.
Did you do other countries?
No, with
Okay.
Pitbull, it was only Saudi Arabia and the United States.
Okay, got it.
Weirdly.
So after the Saudi Arabia stuff, he just had more one-off U.S. dates, is what you're saying?
Yes.
Okay, yeah. When you were on the first round tour, were you on a bus between cities? Were you flying? How was the travel?
Yeah, we were in a tour bus.
Yeah.
It was, if I remember correctly, 6 buses. We were bus number 1. It was the band and the dancers. So it's these very big buses that have bunk beds and a kitchen and bathroom and everything. And it fits 12 people.
Yeah, your typical kind of tour bus.
Yes.
Yeah. So cool. Okay. Well, we've probably spent enough time on that, but I'm just fascinated by it because it's not very common. I don't know anyone else that has done that large of a tour. So then Karol G comes after that. What was the timeline there?
Yeah, Karol was last year, 2023, from July until September.
U.S. dates again, or was this elsewhere?
Yeah, Karol was her United States tour.
Yeah, because she's Colombian?
Yeah, she's Colombian. She does reggaeton.
Yeah.
It was her first stadium tour in the United States. So we played in a lot of cities that have a lot of like Hispanic community, you know, so we did a lot of California, Texas, Florida. It was really cool. I really loved going on that tour because I got to reconnect with my culture and I was speaking Spanish the whole time.
That connection was the same sort of tour team that put Pitbull's thing together, that put Karol G together? Is that how you ended up on the Karol G tour?
Yeah, so the Rob Trujillo, he's the music director for Karol and Pitbull.
Yeah. So he was impressed by your first round. And were you doing saxophone and guitar again?
No, this one was tenor, saxophone, and flute.
And flute.
So it was another. Yeah.
And how long had it been since you'd been playing flute?
Well, thankfully, I dabble here and there.
Okay.
You know, yes.
Not as,
Again,
not
very
as much
challenging,
of a stretch, but okay.
Yeah.
Do you foresee more of these kind of tours happening in the future?
I think so, yeah. I would love to go on a tour again. I would also love to tour with other artists and maybe other styles of music too. Like, I think with anything, I'm open to whatever comes.
Yeah. Do any crazy stories or experiences come to mind with any of the touring?
Oh my God, yes. I guess with Pitbull, I think we were playing at the Tortugas Music Festival in Florida. And I looked to the side of the stage. I'm just doing my thing, you know, playing little. And I look and there's John Travolta standing, just watching. He looked like John Travolta, but also not because I don't think I've seen him since the movies. And now he's like,
right.
You know, he looks a little different now.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was super cool. And with Karol, I got to meet Selena Gomez, Alicia Keys, and J Balvin.
Wow.
Yes, all of them were watching the show and they come to the back of the stage. So we got to say hi to them. That was super cool, you know, like I never thought I would meet any of these huge artists. And then with Pitbull, going to Saudi Arabia was probably also one of the craziest things I've ever seen because Saudi Arabia is such a different country from the United States. You know, it's...
In many ways.
In many ways. It was really cool.
Yeah.
It was really cool.
I'm sure a once-in-a-lifetime experience for the most part, yeah. What about connections along the way? Have you stayed in touch with your band members? Did you meet other people that you've since collaborated with since you were on the road?
That's a good question. I have stayed in touch with my band members, yeah. Especially with the Karol. It was an all-girl band. They were all girls from Latin America who live in the United States, just like me. Everybody lives in different cities, but we have definitely stayed in touch. And yeah.
Any big lessons or takeaways from being on tour that you would tell people? You know, if let's say somebody else is in a similar situation, they're about to go on their first big tour. What was like your key takeaway from that whole experience?
Oh my God, that's a good question. Big takeaway from going on tour. I guess as a jazz musician, the way that the pop industry works is very different. You know, it's it's not just about the music, you know, which it could be a good thing or a bad thing, depending on how you want to see it. But there is a lot of emphasis on the, you know, like the visual aspect, the performance aspect. And I actually love that. So be open to learning and being open to experiencing new things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm glad that you said that, because I think it's a great segue into what I want to talk with you next about. But you mentioned multiple times that was the feedback you would get. It wasn't on your playing. It was on, hey, we need you to look the part. This is a show, and the fact that, you go back to your hotel room or whatever and get on YouTube and be like, all right, what do I do here? That's impressive to me, because there's a lot of people that would go, if you said that to them, let's say if they're playing the fine line or they're playing 7th Street Entry, be like, hey, look the part more, like make this more interesting as we watch you. There might be some pushback of like, that's gimmicky, or, I don't want to, that's just trying too hard. But at the highest levels, that's what they want, So I love hearing that story, just because I think it's a nice emphasis, like, or maybe a reiteration of how important the visual aspect is, the shows are, and ultimately how important it is to entertain your audience. Because you're right, in the pop industry, and obviously Pitbull is top 40 pop, but anything that touches pop, it doesn't have to be that. Anything that circles in that world, like, people expect to have a good show of some sort. Now, there's different versions of that. Yes. Not everybody is going to put on something that looks like a Pitbull show, or even, the lower versions of that on the way up that, not everybody can afford to put one on, even if they wanted to. But it's the mentality that I'm getting at, that it's important to do what you can for your audience to be as entertained as possible. It's not just about playing your songs. Whereas in the jazz world, there's going to be more attention to what the playing is doing and what the music is doing, perhaps more so.
Yeah, I agree. But also look at Miles Davis. He was playing jazz and he was still wearing these very crazy clothing. He was wearing sunglasses on stage, I think there is definitely levels to this, I don't know. If you're playing country music, maybe you're not going to dress like Pitbull,
Right.
or like if you're playing weird experimental jazz, maybe you're not going to dress like a rapper. I don't know. There's, but...
Or maybe you will.
Oh, maybe you will.
The point is that it depends on what you think your audience wants to see.
Yeah. And also who you are. And this also goes to social media. It's all tied together, but you have to be yourself at the end of the day. You have to, like, if you want to start creating content on social media and you have something to say, I think you have to be yourself. You cannot be trying to be somebody else or trying to copy somebody else, because it's going to look not authentic, right? And I think besides from entertaining your audience, they want to go home and they want to have felt something, even if it's an impression from your energy, how much fun you're having on stage, how you choose to present yourselves with your clothing, with your hair, with your face, with your words, with your playing. I think it's more about communicating something to the audience and making them feel something. If they're going to a Pitbull show, they're going to party and get entertained. So I think it's very fitting to be a rock star and jump on stage and have a lot of fun. But if you're playing more singer-songwriter music and maybe you're writing sad songs about a breakup, then how do you create that environment in your shows, in your social media, in your interviews? I think it's about creating an experience, really. And that's something that I learned from being part of the pop tour. Pitbull creates his own experience and Carol has her own different experience. And me as the saxophone player, as part of the band, I was told what to do and how to act and how to dress. So to me, it was more like an acting gig sometimes, the Pitbull one. I would go to my hotel room and I was just wearing my normal Lucia clothes, and then I would totally transform into a rock star. And I felt that when I put my ponytail, I was even like another person. I was the rock star, me. And then I would take it off and just go back to being myself. And with Carol, it was also a similar experience, So I want to add to that I also have danced a lot. When I was in Peru, I did a lot of belly dancing, and I still take dance classes for fun. That's kind of my hobby on the side. But that has helped me so much learn how to move my body, learn how to move around space.
Yeah. Be expressive.
Yeah, be expressive with my body. And, you know, I think the more things that you can do as an artist, from learning to dance to speak in public, everything will show as part of your, you know, of your art and your creations, as long as you're authentic too.
Yeah. Okay, I do want to move to the social media conversation because I think we've covered that. But I also want to clarify one point that ties in, which is I 100% agree that you have to be authentic. And there's multiple ways to do that. It's not just playing the rock star part, for instance. But I think at the same time, you have to know what you're trying to accomplish. On one hand, you have to be authentic. And on the other hand, what you were saying, yeah, they told me what to do and I acted the part. You know, that's also not authentic to you, but you were being hired for somebody else's vision, you know? So you were just filling in that role and saying, this is what I'm going to do. And I'll learn from it and I'll enjoy it along the way and ultimately embrace the part and so that you can grow from it too. Because that's what ultimately taught you how to, or at least maybe inspired you to how to look at your social media in terms of being expressive, being able to maybe turn it up a little bit, you know, to get your point across to your fans. But then for your social media to do it in the ways that are authentic to you, not to Pitbull, for instance.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. So social media, we touched on it earlier. You had started putting out some of your videos. You started playing some of the famous pop songs. You were doing jazz solos too. You still do that to this day. It starts growing. I got to imagine the touring helps, right? Get your following up at that point. Is that when you really started to see it increase, or how did the growth of followers happen over time?
I actually, no, the social media was before touring.
Okay.
When I started touring, I had to take a break from YouTube and everything else just because I wasn't home and I was busy with other stuff with touring.
Okay. Well, then in that case, because I just assumed that there was momentum coming from, you know, being in front of huge audiences, basically. If that's not the case, how did the growth happen in terms of how long did it take? Was there some turning moment where it was wow, something went viral and it takes off? Has it just been a steady climb over the years and there's nothing more to it than that? When somebody looks at your, let's say, Instagram with, 65,000 followers or something now, I think it feels so out of reach to a lot of people. It's how does that work?
Yeah. So that's a good question. I think I started early in the game when most people were using Instagram to post pictures of their food.
Sure.
I was posting pictures of me playing the saxophone. And I started doing this with my friend Gemma Higas, who went to McNally with me. She's an amazing keyboard player and she was on tour with Carol with me too. But we did have a viral video that was a cover from Hey Arnold, the Hey Arnold soundtrack. It went massive viral for, I don't even know, for a month or so. You could find people talking about it on blogs, on Reddit. People were making covers and posting their own, transcriptions of our solos. Even the writer of the soundtrack left us a comment on our YouTube video saying that he loved our rendition to his song, which was so cool. This was a moment where, yeah, definitely, I think she's now doing social media full time and both our followers just grew massively. So then we noticed that people really love these covers. So we did one for the Ghostbusters theme. We did one for, what was it? The Powerpuff Girls. We just started doing these covers of soundtracks, We played the melody. She played the synthesizer. I played the saxophone. And then we would take super ripping, obnoxious solos. And they would be 50 seconds long, but people loved them. So that was kind of the beginning of it, for Instagram. Then I started collaborating with other Instagram musicians from, some friends from New York, from LA. We would make our own, collaborations. And I became part of this kind of community of musicians who were trying to grow their followers and making content together. Now, I think the game has changed a little bit. This was back in 2018, 2020, 2021. Now, I think everybody's creating content, and the algorithm which we talk about the algorithm, right? It's this machine,
Yeah.
kind of like godlike machine that
Everyone talks about the algorithm, but no one knows anything about the algorithm.
Yeah. I don't even know what it is,
Yeah.
but I think it's some sort of like model that they have that pushes your content to more people or not, or hides it from people. So I think this algorithm thing keeps changing all the time. Now, social media is turning into quantity over quality, I think. TikTok is ruling a lot of the game. I think TikTok started as a platform for very short videos, and now it's starting to want to replace YouTube. So it's favoring longer form content, still vertical mode. And then there's this like battle between Instagram and TikTok. So Instagram copies everything that TikTok does. And, I don't know.
It is changing. And there's a lot of, I think, talk online about it changing, especially from creators that had success years ago, because it feels like the rules are different or something.
Yeah.
I can't speak to that. I've never really had any success online, so it's all the same to me. But it is an interesting thing that people generally are constantly speculating on the algorithm, but we don't know anything about it, and it's never confirmed either. I say things about it too. I'm not immune to it. Like we're all have a hypothesis of I think this is what works and this doesn't. I'm as guilty as anyone. But at the end of the day, nobody knows why or how or when anything's going to happen. All you have control over is whether or not you're going to show up, whether or not you're going to make something that's good. And I mean good to you, authentic to you. And if you can keep repeating it, because for sure those things matter. You have to show up consistently, and you got to make something that's good.
How do you know what's good?
Well, that's a great question. I think there's two things that can qualify, basic things that can qualify. One is if you feel like it represents you well, because then at the very least, even if it doesn't have traction, your profile page has a good representation of what you're trying to do. My studio page, for instance, I think of it a little bit more like a website than a social media profile, because I don't actively post on it. I do occasionally, but I think of it more as like if somebody wants to look me up and wants to just verify that I'm a real person in a real studio, that they can find some work, they can see the space, everything that a website would show them, they can see on Instagram. That like they can see some reviews, they can see what the amenities and the space and the gear looks like, they can hear some of my work, they get a sense of what they're getting into, and that's all. So I think that can make it good content, and that it's informational, it's accurate, it represents what you're trying to say. Now, the other thing that makes content good is if people like it. And that's really what it comes down to, right? If it goes viral, or if it has a lot of shares or saves or interactions of any sort, that's what makes it good. Whether or not the content objectively, in your opinion, is good, if it's popular, it's good. That's really what it comes down to. Now, in a perfect world, we want it to be both those things. We want it to matter to us and to matter to everyone else. And sometimes that happens, and that's a wonderful feeling when it does, but sometimes it doesn't. And so what you have to ask yourself is, if I'm trying to grow, if I'm trying to be popular, then at that point, it is down to interactions. Then you have to chase what people actually want to interact with. So if you put something out and you think it's objectively great, but no one else likes it, and it just sort of dies, well, it might be that kind of content is not good for that platform. You've got to make something else, or it's not good for the people who are currently following you. There can be other things, like you might just be making the wrong content for the wrong audience. And in that case, it might take more consistency to like give it enough time for that content to find the right audience. Maybe originally it'd be like how you would hashtag something to find people. I hear less about that now. I think it's more about just posting enough that the algorithm maybe has time to put it in front of the right people, or paying for placement where you're showing it to the people you want it to do, like an ad. But at the end of the day, they're in business. Platforms like TikTok and Instagram are in business to try to match content with people. So if they think that you like certain types of videos, they're looking for them and they're going to try to feed them to you, right? And it's just about being very clear on what that is. So if your content is clearly for a specific type of person, they'll probably figure that out and put it in front of those people in time, as long as you do it enough times. And then from there, you can decide if anybody likes it or not. And if they don't be afraid to change and do something new, which actually is a question that I've had for you. How much experimenting and different types of stuff have you tried over the years? Or has it kind of been a focused type of content creation for you?
For Instagram?
Let's stick with Instagram, yeah.
Good question. I'm not sure if I've ever changed much. I've always made my videos playing the saxophone. Sometimes I play the EOE, sometimes I play the alto, the tenor. I guess we did have this series of making soundtracks for, cartoons with Gemma.
Mm-hmm.
People love those. Now I'm starting a new series that I'm testing out that's recording pop solos over famous pop songs from 2010 to 2020. So I want to do that decade. And I called it Make Pop Saxophone Great Again. No, it was, no, sorry. Make Pop Saxophone Cool Again. For me, social media has always been kind of silly. I think I am silly.
Yeah.
With everything I do. I very seldom take myself too serious. Well, I do take myself very serious. When I have to do serious work, I do. But with anything that's related to me, I'm learning. Everything that I do, I'm still learning it. So there's always this kind of humorous component to me. At least it's in, when I do stuff for me. And I love doing that with social media too. Finding dumb captions, finding dumb ways to name things, making jokes. Actually, that has always been a way for me to connect with my followers. Back in 2020, I cannot even think of these anymore, but I had a bunch of running jokes that I would, for maybe a year, I would post stories on this joke and then people would comment on that and I would joke with them. And I always make sure to respond to their comments and messages because they're fun. I have made friends like that from social media. So yeah.
That was actually going to be one of my other questions is how much do you interact with your audience, with your fans? Do you spend a lot of time doing that? I do a lot.
Yeah, I do. I try to respond to all the comments that are interesting. If someone asks a question, I will respond to them. If they send me a message, I will respond to them too. Like I said, I've made very good friends just talking on social media. And I also have shared I've learned a lot from people. Sometimes we talk about music. They send me new songs to check out. Yeah, I think the important thing is building a community, I think. The numbers, of course, they're cool. If you have millions, it's great. But at the end of the day, at least for what I want to do, I want to release jazz. I'm about to release a jazz fusion album that's kind of very niche-y. I don't know how many people in the world like that. Probably not billions, millions. So for me, I think it's more important to have a following that might not be huge, in the millions, but that's a solid community of people that I can show my music to.
I think that that's really smart. In my opinion, it's way better to have a small following that loves what you're doing than a big following that is uninterested. And I think there can be too much importance put on numbers. Don't get me wrong. They help. They can help you with just social proof. So if somebody's looking to hire you for a gig or, when you have a ton of plays on something or a ton of followers, there's just sort of an instant credibility that can be given to you, whether earned or not. But that's the nice thing of it, right? But you don't need a huge following to have success, to fund a career, to whether that's, recording of a record or running a recording studio or any of those things.
You don't even need a following to do a lot of those things. I think, there's still people who are doing things locally and finding a community in their city that maybe finds out about them from, who knows, the radio, word of mouth. Maybe they're having a residency somewhere. I think nowadays people are putting so much attention and so much importance to the numbers on social media. And I believe it can be damaging to artists because people are creating things for the numbers and not so much for the art itself and for themselves. And I mean, I don't know how good that is for mental health at the end of the day, so I believe there needs to be a balance with how we use and think of social media.
How has your mindset on social media changed over the years?
So I've always had this thing that every comment that I get, be it good or bad, I will read it. If they're saying that I'm the best saxophone player in the world, I know it's not true. If they're saying I'm the worst one, I also know that's not true. At the end of the day, I think the ultimate, most important opinion that matters is my own. You have to do the work mentally and work on yourself in order to know where it is that you are at, in life and music and your art and your career. You have to be very honest. I think you have to do a lot of self-reflection when you're an artist and try to mute everything around you. At the end of the day, when I'm sitting in my studio with my saxophone and my music, it's just me and nothing else really matters, when I'm creating. Or that's what I try to accomplish anyway. I think that's freedom, like a freedom of mind that I think it's necessary in order to be a musician and artist nowadays.
Yeah, and to create something that matters too, to have that sort of headspace to not let everything else influence it.
Yeah, when I make these, like right now I'm doing this series of recording saxophone and pop songs. I mean, I'm doing this ultimately because I love doing it. It's fun to me. And I'm learning how to mix my own saxophone. I'm learning how to record my own saxophone and make it sound good. Every video that I make, I try to make it better than the one before. Be it with the video editing, with the sound, with my ideas, with the songs that I play. So I see the content that I make as little snippets. I am obsessed with the creative process, like coming up with an idea, planning it, executing it, and then putting it out into the world and just forgetting about it and going into the next one. And social media allows me to do this in small little projects that are ultimately teaching me how to create something bigger, like an album, or write my own songs, create an aesthetic for a live show, etc.
I think that's a great way to look at it. A lot of people look at content of like, this is something I have to do, and this is unrelated. It's taking me away from my art. But then maybe change what kind of content you're making and try to make
it doesn't have to.
Try to make it something that is fulfilling and ultimately serving your end goal. I think it's tough to talk about because there's a lot of nuance to these things. You can simultaneously care about the art and also realize that, well, there's business and we also need to like have this work, and like you can be tactful about, let's make this kind of content because it will be entertaining, but I will also enjoy making it, like it'll be fun for me, but it's also good for the audience. You have to think about both sides. So I think sometimes when it's talked about of like, oh, it's just what I want to do. Yeah, it might be, but it's okay if some of those decisions are also that, and I know it'll work better. Like if I pick popular pop songs, like these will do better. Maybe I would pick something different, but I know that this works for this and I'll still enjoy it. I'm not saying that there's some like perfect solution of where it's all pure and, you still have to make some trade-offs with everything, but find something that works, that feels enjoyable, and then that's serving your end goal and ultimately makes you better at what you're trying to do. Yeah. Okay. We haven't touched at all on your YouTube, and that's really interesting. So I want to pivot over to that quickly because you, again, earlier in the episode mentioned that you realized that there was an underserved need in your community with having music education specifically in Spanish. Can you talk about how that got started and how it's going now?
Yeah, so that was a pandemic project, from having a lot of free time. So I started making videos about how to play the saxophone, like saxophone technique. So articulations, vibrato, tuning, like very specific to the saxophone. And I was just recording them in my room in Spanish, of course. And it gained a lot of attention very quick. I think I only did this for a year, but I got to grow to 40,000 or something like that followers on YouTube I started a Patreon account where I was posting more in-depth videos, posting PDFs, teaching people how to navigate changes, how to play arpeggios more with music jazz theory. I think in the pandemic, I was like making money from it. I was like surviving from it, and it grew very quick. It also became a lot of work very quick because of how fast it grew. And then I was also teaching privately. So one of my Patreon tiers was have a private lesson with me for, I don't know, $50 or something like that. As a one-woman production team, this happened to be too much. I had to stop making YouTube videos when I went on tour just because I didn't have the time anymore. But it was a very fulfilling experience for me, not just because of the financial aspect, like I noticed that you can make an income from social media, but also because I was doing something that felt good to me too. And I was doing it for my community, like you said, for, where I come from. And I want to go back to doing it when I have a little more time.
So that's kind of on pause currently?
Yes, It's been on hold, sadly.
Is your Patreon also on hold, or do you keep that going?
My Patreon is still up, and I have the videos that I made. It was a course. Mm-hmm. It's still there. I still have people who sign up for it. I believe that they do the course, they study it, and then they unsubscribe. So it's a little bit of passive income too that I created back in 2020.
How many videos were in that course?
I can't remember anymore.
Okay.
To be honest.
Sure.
Yeah.
I'm just curious. I mean, I know how much work that is. It takes a lot. So good on you for going down that. I'm sure now if you chose to get back into it, you'll make something even better. What have you felt has been the hardest things to overcome with social media? And what do you think have been the largest benefits for doing so?
I guess, like you said, no one is immune to the numbers, Sometimes when it's happened that I make a video and it just doesn't get as many views as I would have wanted to, or something that took me 5 hours to make. And then I can tell that Instagram is not showing it to the world like I would have hoped to. So I guess just coming to terms with that is hard, But if you have a plan, like a long-term plan for it, then a little video is not that relevant, If it does well or not, who cares? I think maybe that, like not basing your whole career off of some dumb numbers from the internet, Not that dumb. I know that they're important. And I think the biggest benefits for me have been, if you see in my bio, I have recorded with artists like Chad LB, who's like an amazing saxophone player from New York, saxophone influencer. He's just insane. I was on his record with Melissa Aldana and Arturo Sandoval and a bunch of amazing musicians. And this would not have happened if I didn't have a social media presence. That's how he found out about me. I mean, I am not a musician in New York. I live in Minneapolis. And I guess it has allowed me to work with people from outside of the scene. I have also worked with artists from India, from Europe, Latin America. And this would not have happened without my social media.
Yeah. The connection to the wider world that it gives you, if you can build up a large enough audience that your stuff is reaching more people. And you won't get there unless you are okay with some failing along the way. For me, I would say, I kind of feel like this was a little bit at the point of what you were saying with being immune to the numbers. If you put out a video and it flops, I think one of the easiest ways to get past that is having a system where you're going to do more than one. That if you're like, I'm making this no matter what, it's going to go out no matter what. It's a little easier to be immune to one of them just not working, because it's like, all right, well, the next one's going out tomorrow. And, it's going to happen anyways. I'm still doing it. And you start to learn things along that way. I think it's when you put so much emphasis on like, I spent 2 days making this video and it's perfect, and then it doesn't do well. Like that's what's really, really hard. So I think part of setting yourself up for success for the long run is having a longer term mindset of like, it's not about trying to make one video. It's about trying to make hundreds of them, and creating the systems, the setup, whatever you need to just keep making them, so that if one doesn't work for whatever reason, because sometimes we have no idea why something does or doesn't work, it's fine. You're just going to make another one and keep going. And if you can do that and keep actively looking at, oh, people do tend to like this thing, and then follow that a little bit, use that feedback, you'll grow your audience.
Yes, I agree with all that.
All right. Well, I really appreciate your time, and we've already been talking for a while, so I don't want to keep you a whole lot longer, but I would be upset if we didn't talk about this new record that's coming out. I know it's finished, it's ready, it's coming. Do you have a release date?
Yes, it's going to be released mid-October, but I have a set of 3 singles that will be released in 6 weeks increments. The first one, called Porcelain, is released the 17th of May. So that one is already ready to go.
And what are you going to do for your marketing and promotion for this?
Well, first of all, I'm going to be playing a show at Berlin here in Minneapolis.
Oh, nice.
So I have a single release show. I have an amazing band, like local amazing band, Kavi, Toivo, Joe Mason, and Jonathan. Then what else?
What day is the show?
Oh, the show is May 18th.
This might be out before then. So yeah, May 18th, Berlin.
Sweet. Yes, everybody show up. Other than that, I'm going to have some videos that I recorded in the studio that I'm going to be releasing.
What about like posts? You're just going to kind of wing that as you go, or do you have like a plan of what you want to be posting on socials for it?
I don't really have a plan right now. No.
Just kind of make stuff as it comes out. And
well, I think I have to make a plan at some point in the next couple days. But today I don't have one
yet, but it's coming.
Yes.
Okay, that's fair. You could have guest musicians do pop solos over your songs.
Yeah, right.
Just have it twist the tables on you.
Yeah. The tables turn.
Yeah. Cool. That's great. Is there anything else you want to talk about in terms of the album? Things that you're aiming for, or the process of making it, or anything that you want to bring up?
Well, I guess this album is, for me, it feels a little bit of like a career change.
Okay.
I keep joking with my family that I'm changing careers within my own career, because so far I have been a side person for as long as I can remember, be it here in Minneapolis or be it with Pitbull or Karol G, when I was on tour with them. And I think this is something that I've wanted to do since I was in college. I always wanted to put my own shows together and have my own record and have my own music and my band. I don't know. It always seemed like a kind of very far away dream that one day when I'm ready and I'm mature enough musically and as a person, I can perhaps do it. And I think the time has come, and that for me is extremely exciting and terrifying. It's a lot of work. Like we were talking before, I have to wear all the hats in the Lucia Sarmiento team right now. But I am going from being on the side to being in the center and being the one who's organizing and visualizing and creating like we talked about, like the setting and the mood and everything. It's very hard, and it involves making a lot of decisions. But also I think I've been kind of preparing for this time for the past 10 years with my social media and with all the experiences that I got from being on tour and seeing how the biggest pop stars do it, because at the end of the day, when I'm on tour with Pitbull, I am part of his project, same thing with Karol. I'm being part of her project, and they happen to have a team of hundreds of people who create this project. But I have made friends with a lot of these people, and I have seen the behind the scenes of everything. So it's a very exciting moment for me right now.
Yeah. Well, I'm excited for you. And I wish you the best when you start rolling out the singles and obviously the album this fall. If people want to check you out online, get details on the show or other future shows, where would you like to send them?
You can go to my website, luciasarmiento.com. You can also follow me on Instagram. It's Lu Sarmiento Music. Maybe you can put it in the caption.
We'll definitely put it in the show notes.
It can be kind of tricky to spell for some.
We'll have the link in the show notes.
Yes, sweet. And May 18th, that's my show at Berlin.
That'll be fun.
Yeah.
Before I let you go, one of the questions I've been asking all the guests is, what is your secret from the scene? what is a tip that you would like to pass on to other people, maybe yourself while you were at McNally? What would be something that you would have really benefited from hearing that you now know?
I always go back to this one sheet that I made in 2018 from Ari Herstand's book, which is the making
how to make it in the
map.
new music business.
Yes, making a map of your dreams. Like, I remember the way he put it was, don't just write your goals, but write your dreams. What is your wildest dream for the next 5 to 10 to 20 years? You know, that was something I did. And I don't know if it's that I manifested it or however you want to say. I don't know if I believe in that, but I worked towards it because it was on a piece of paper and I could see it. Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of advice out there that points to the importance of just writing something down.
Yeah.
As your first step to making it real is that you have to write it down. A lot of what you wrote down in 2018 came true.
Yes. I'm still working towards the rest, you know, and I have another secret of the scene that will be to work very hard every day. If you have very clear what it is that you want, what is your dream, what moves you and what motivates you to wake up every day, then you also have to be consistent and put the work.
Yeah.
I don't think if that's a secret, it's just putting the work.
I think, you know, a phrase that I like quite a bit is we need to be reminded more than we need to be taught. Because a lot of that, yeah, we know, but it helps to hear it over and over and over and over again.
It does. Yeah.
Thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it. This conversation's been really fun. And I'll put all your links in the show notes, and hopefully we can reconnect in the future, maybe after the records come out, and see how things are going for you. For everyone that tuned in and watched and listened, I really, really appreciate you being here. And if you liked this episode, please share it with a friend that you think could benefit from it. It always helps to get a like, subscribe, and all of that. So please do that. And if you have any other guests that you'd like me to reach out to, any other topics that you would like me to address, send me an email, send me a DM. My socials and contact are also in the show notes, and I will try to accommodate all the requests. For now, thank you for listening. I'll see you next time.